Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Verellen here. I'm hoping you guys have a chance to go outside and enjoy the nice weather. This week, we're going to be discussing what happened with the other part of the 70s, not necessarily the Vietnam War part, but the presidential issues with President Nixon. President Nixon had been in politics for a long time. He was the person that ran against JFK for the presidency. He was the vice president prior to that, and he lost to JFK and then decided to run again in 1968. And like I said, he grew up in California and, kind of really established himself as a politician at that point. Some stuff about his presidency and him getting elected. He had this Southern strategy, is what it's called. He didn't approve of the silent majority of the people who were protesting against the war at the time. He did not fully support the civil rights movement because he felt more, not because of racism issues, more so when it came to political views of like how much it would help him, politically gaining an advantage and stuff like that. And he felt like the blacks weren't going to vote for him, so he wasn't going to do a lot to campaign for them. And so instead he focused on these white Southern Democrats to try and get them to vote for him. But during the 70s, there were some big issues going on. And one of the first things was that this oil crisis that came out in. So in 1973, you have some of our major Middle Eastern nations that obviously supplied us at this point in time with a tremendous amount of oil, went to war. We were backing Israel. Arab members that were in Israel and Egypt and other parts of Syria did not like that we were backing them. And so they put an embargo on our oil, which basically caused our oil prices to skyrocket. Now, you seeing those numbers might be nothing to you when you see 25 cents jump to 65 cents, when we see something, as little as 40 cents jump within a day. But that was a huge deal before. Gas prices, rose very steadily for a long time until they started falling. I remember in 2008, gas was over $4 a gallon. And, the fact that they're so low right now just shows you the flux in that market. But that obviously caused a huge part of inflation. Unemployment increased. I was just talking to my parents the other day. When they bought their house in 1979, the interest rate on their mortgage was 13%, when today you can usually get a mortgage rate around 3%. So you can see that, our economy at the time was definitely going through a lot. Nixon had a very good relationship with his Secretary of State, was Henry Kissinger. Here we're still dealing with the Soviet Union. We still have a Cold War going on. It just is not as, contentious as it was in the 1960s. And so now we had issues with China and what was going on still in Vietnam. And we're trying to look at what to do once these wars were over. Another big thing at this time, again, still with the Soviet Union, this arms race, and we basically had a space race too. So July 20th, 1969, this was when the moon landing happened. This is huge. You guys, have heard stuff about this before, them walking on the moon the first time. I just watched a series. If you guys have Netflix, there's a series called History 101. And I watched the one on the space race. I encourage you guys to watch it. It talks about the moon landing. It talks about all the money we were pumping into that system, because not only do we want to do stuff, but the Soviets were beating us prior to this, and we really wanted to upstage them with what happened. So check that out if you guys have Netflix. Okay, now getting to the other part, the Watergate scandal. This is the big part we're going to talk about today. All right, so what happened here? The Watergate scandal comes down to President Nixon trying to cover something up. And that part was against the law. He did not understand or know the first part of what happened. It was the stuff that happened after this incident that caused the problems. So in 1972, Nixon was up for re-election. And a lot of people thought he was going to win it again. People were happy with his first 4 years in office. But some people were obviously upset with how, Vietnam was happening. But he did pull out most of the troops from Vietnam by 1972. And so his aides tried to come up with a plan to have him reelected. And so they kind of came up with some schemes. And obviously, when you hear the word schemes, you think of illegal activity, and some of them were. So they created this enemies list, and you guys can see there where they had all these people that weren't in support of the president. They kind of put them on there, and then they may have gotten an audit where they were charged with tax evasion or something crazy like that.